All right, so this is Louise Campbell Anthony, the affiliate director here with the Peacekeeping Task Force. This is our Strategy Task Force Session 7. Today is January 19th, 2025. So let's get started. Those who's going to come in late, they will pick in or catch up on the replay. So let me share my screen. Let's see. All right. So what we're going to go over today, and those who are not here right now, as you watch this replay, I'll need your feedback on this, what we're going to go over today. So anybody who is here who would like to be on the Strategy Task Force, just put your name in the chat and the state you're on, and your email address, and any assemblies who are here, you go ahead and put your name in the chat as well, and I will capture that information there later. So I'm going to put in the chat my notes here for you all to download and walk through here with me. Welcome, latecomers. Let me put this in the chat here for you. Give me a moment. Let me stop my screen share so I can put it in the chat for you. All right, chat. I know that you can't receive these documents until you are here. So that's the outline for today. So let me go ahead and you can go ahead and download that. And I will go back to my screen share and continue with what we're going to be starting on here. So today, you should have received the Phase 6 interim report I sent out this week. About next meeting, we will discuss how to broadcast our message to the public with clear and consistent language based on sound premises. This goes hand in hand with devising effective strategies based on sound premises. And this is the interim report I sent out last week. So let's get into this. I'm gonna go back here to the outline of agenda for today. I'm gonna skip number 3 for now. We're gonna go to number 4. Identify the sound versus unsound premises our strategies are based on and make necessary changes to the strategy. Now, there was good dialogue going back and forth over the past couple weeks of challenging the particular strategies that we have in the project and mindset of how we are approaching it. So today, I want us to really look at the premises and challenge them, analyze them, see if we're missing something, see if we need to identify, no, that's not a sound premise. That's actually inaccurate premise for us to base our strategy on. So we need to look at it this way. Everybody have their way of looking at our approach. So I encourage you to voice whatever your approach is, whatever your premise is. I'm going to start off with going over the premises that we have outlined so far. So I have some premises that I've outlined here in the implementation guide. This is the implementation guide for the PKTF, and it has my premises in it. This one here. You all have a copy of this. I'm going to go over the premises that I have, and then I want you to take notes as we go over these, because this is going to have to be a dialogue back and forth, and you're going to have to think about these. Maybe you might not be able to think about them on the spot right now, and you might think of something later. So that's why I take notes. If something stands out to you in your mind of what you want to challenge or what doesn't seem quite accurate, take note on it. And then after I go over the premises, my premises, and then we have a set premises that's coming from Boyd, Adams, and then we have a set of premises that's coming from Rave and which they have communicated to us through our emails. So everybody got their responses. So if you have some that you're going to throw in the pot here today, we want to hear those. So I'm going to start off with mine, and then I'm going to go into Rave's, and hers is an audio, and then I'm going to go into Boyd's. And then I'm going to go to the floor and see if you all want to analyze these, what notes you've taken as I've been reading them. You'll take notes and see and write down what you want to say after I get done. So here are my premises. We have a systemic federal franchise incursion predicament that the county cannot correct by simply standing up their county courts. If first, the federal incursion of these franchises onto our soil jurisdiction is not addressed on the federal level. This can only be done by the partnership of the federal and county parties being brought to the same table and getting on the same page. We will leverage the authority of our highest office, which is the county sheriff, to rein in the entire state franchise control over our states. We must know that war and guns are inappropriate response to our attempt at reestablishing the terms of our contracts, which are the constitutions. We do not have a sovereign-to-sovereign relationship with our employees. It is an employer-to-employee relationship between the parties involved. A civil war can potentially be instigated among the public by the U.S.A. or the U.S. provocateurs, undermining our authority if they agitate those of the public who refuses to accept the American government as legitimate and/or competent. We must not only demonstrate that we are the only legitimate American government, but also that we are a competent government to the public and to the world. To ask the public to recognize their American government without demonstrating that we are competent to lead them has potential for a pushback and a civil war. The public will fight to keep the U.S. government in place instead of us if we appear incompetent. They would rather keep criminal incompetence because they are brainwashed. That's my opinion. We will have to emulate the competence of the de facto government while exposing its criminality for the people to view us as both legitimate and competent. Doing this will create familiarity for people to relate to and to minimize potential for civil war or pushback from them. The purpose is to facilitate in their acceptance of us as we replace the de facto in their everyday lives. Using terms that Trump uses will help, like capitulation tour, think tank, task force, mission, stand down, COG, which means continuity of government. But in our case, means capitulation of government, not continuity of government. For them, it's transition of government, but in our case, it's transference of government. Trump is our bridge to taking our place on the world stage as the American government. Why do I say this? Because the world is behind him. And if you listen to him and study the military operation he was hired for, he has invited our sovereign American government to take the helm based on his 2016 inaugural speech. At least that's how I'm choosing to interpret his invitation. He states, and I quote, "Transferring power from Washington, D.C. and giving it back to you, the people," unquote. This is why I use the phrase transference of government. Let's call them to the carpet on this. We are the only government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Those are my premises there, and I got another set here that I had in my mind as I drafted up the strategies here initially, as you see in the implementation guides. So these are also my premises. My thought is the nationals organized as a state assembly cannot function as a county assembly, but nationals organized as a county assembly can function in a second capacity as a state assembly. Nationals who form a county assembly can change hats and form their state assembly as well. Our Supreme Courts are at the county level, not the state level. What benefits does this afford us in our court processes and our special concurrent general jurisdiction over the laws in our state? No American state national is required to serve our government. So our objective need to be to rescue as many as possible and educate them to self-govern. This goes for those who choose to hold a dual political status as well. I hear a hot mic there. All states have a General Assembly standing right now. What authority do they carry? We are a government, not simply an organization, and we hold a duty and responsibility to not only the American public, but also to the world to govern this country competently. The U.S., state, local officials, and employees can declare their political status as an American and hold dual political status. We ultimately want to fire our United States federal subcontractors and bring all Americans home and do these jobs ourselves. To get capitulation from these officials, we'll take multiple meetings and additional strategies, such as a threat of loss of their prosperity benefits, public pressure, etc. There is no state sovereignty or state immunity. State, county, and city governments are mere franchises of the federal government and must be directed by their parent federal corporation. When communicating with our employees, silence is not acceptable or even a reasonable response when you are an employer. This is not about legal versus lawful processes or living versus dead at this level. We need to think in terms of the federal contract when engaging with them. Shift our attention and our approach from focusing on the courts and the law to focusing on the contract. The people don't even know that the Constitution was a contract that we made and paid for already for their performance of services. Our weapon is not our courts, it is the people. However, they are a weapon that has potential to be wielded for us or against us. The people need to be properly educated that they are Americans and what that really means. Last premise that I have, it says, when you go public, that means us, when we go public, we must air our dirty laundry up front so it can't be used against us later. America's government must speak the true American history to the public about colonial expansion against the original treaties with the natives, genocide of the natives, slavery, white slavery, Native American slavery, and transatlantic African slavery. This one came up in one of our last sessions. These are the premises that I use when I started envisioning the different strategies that you see in these implementation guides. Now, I hope you took notes on that. Now, that's my premises. Now, let's go to Rave's premises. We're going to listen to the audio. She sent this last couple weeks.
Okay, this is Rave Richardson Craine, speaking as a Tennessean, American State National, and private capacity. This is in regards to the PKTF, the most recent strategy task force meeting. And this hopefully will be a short voice message, and I'm doing a voice message because I think it's a little easier to consume than write. So my main consideration is to remind the PKTF that we are the boss, okay? As the Americans, we own the government. We are not requesting the de facto to do anything. We are not asking them to allocate anything. We allocate, we demand, we order, we write down what it is they need to do, and they do it. If they don't do it, then they are operating in treason. What I see is all of the things that need to happen at one time. So we are not going to have conversations. We can go and read the orders that they have already received after we have served them. we can go and read those orders and maybe not even read the orders. We can provide the proof of service and let them know that on this day, we will be here. And you need to give up what you need to give up. You need to stand down where you need to stand down, and you need to help where you are required to help. And I'm saying it like this because if we are indeed the employers and they are the employees, we cannot request them to do anything. That's not how it should be working. At what job does the employee get to tell the boss what to do? And what job does the employee negotiate with the employer? That's not how it works. So, in my opinion, this is a much simpler process than I see thus far. This is a way simpler process. There doesn't need to be a whole lot of phases to this process. I can't record this video and listen to the last strategy task force meeting, but I just wanted to put it out there that we are the employers. We tell them what we need. What is missing is our plan. And I'm not saying a plan, okay, we need to meet to discuss this. No, what I'm saying is just make the plan. Not make a plan to discuss. No, whatever needs to be discussed, just write it down. What is it that we need to do? What is it that we need to allocate? Okay, so if we're going to have an office in the Capitol building, how many offices do we need? Do we just need one office? What do their offices look like? Can 2 or 3 people share the same office? What will be the function of that office? Is this an office? This is why I said that we cannot fight for every single American first. Well, I scratched that. We do fight for every single American, every declared American, because we have to establish ourselves on the land and soil first. We have to take care of ourselves first. We cannot fight for people who also have the right to contract if they are in the United States citizen status. We must respect that. So when we go into the Capitol building, or when we have a part of the Capitol allocated for our purpose, we are only there to ensure that Americans who are declared and who fall under the concurrent superseding jurisdiction of an American state national, that is who we fight for first. Anybody else has to go through the process because we don't have the right to contract for them. Okay, we can make a way for them to get to shore, but we are not going to contract for them because they have this, as it stands, they have the right to contract for themselves. Okay. And I also heard the notion, now this is not in the most recent PKTF strategy task force meeting, but the one before it, the notion that we are saving United States citizens from themselves. We can't do that. Okay. Because that, first of all, we have to save ourselves. Then once we establish a way to receive our own credit, once we establish a way to Whatever else Americans need, if we need allodial titles, we have to figure that out. If we need mortgage cancellation, we have to figure that out, okay? And the reason I'm saying it like this is because all these things take a required study, okay? We don't have time and we don't have the manpower to help individually every single man and woman. Every single man and woman has to take an onus for themselves. So if we are going to help them, it will be because we established a way for them to come to the land and soil for themselves. Once they do the process, whatever process, you know, everybody might not do the 1779 declaration. Everybody might not do that. As a matter of fact, there is at least one other, I believe it's called Republic for the USA. They don't necessarily have a 1779 process. When I did my first declaration, I had not heard of the American Federation, but I declared on the land and soil that I was free. And that I was not a corporate entity. So we have to understand everybody's going to have a different level of knowledge. Everyone is going to have a different level of understanding. And if those people decide, hey, I think what I'm doing falls under that category, then there can be a place for them to come in order to receive the rights and the property.
All right. So that's Rave's input and where her premises are coming from. I do see your hands, but I want to go to Boyd's here first before I take in more input. So let's go to Boyd's input here. Okay. So I'm going to read this. So Boyd says, I agree. He's referring to the audio you just read. I agree, although every living man and woman had their rights taken by fraudulent means. Fraud erases everything it touches. Everyone is sovereign, self-governing. Is any action really necessary? I know this may not be too popular of a way at looking at this, but in all actuality, fraud has occurred. Therefore, it's like it never happened. My way of looking at it at this point is it's time to unite everyone, come together as one. The place to come together is the state assemblies. Who made up the rule to status correct? Was it de facto, the fraudulent de facto? They can't make rules for the living people. We make rules for them. I am 100% on board with Anna's way. She has worked hard all of her life and knows what she is doing. I am just curious to know why anyone should have to do anything. The people unite and form government by the people for the people. The de facto then comes to us and says, hey, can we help you all make this happen? Then our answer is either yes or no. Get rid of de facto, and the assemblies are the government without contractors. State assemblies handle all aspects of government. I fear keeping de facto around may be cause for our great-grandchildren to be faced with the same issues we're facing today. I'm one man with an opinion. I am 928 corrected, and I encourage people to status correct. I'm really just curious of everyone's thoughts on this. Also, the orders that came to public view today has called all de facto to cease and desist. We are what we have now with the support of the military. We should cut no slack. The crimes committed on humanity deserves no slack. Judges, lawyers, etc. have created police officers to be what they are today. Police officers are high school graduates that think the government is boss and must listen to what they say. They never had a chance at the truth till now because of all of us. Never learned in school of 3 constitutions. It's just all criminal in the biggest way, and rightfully, it holds no authority over the people. Sovereign people don't need to prove anything to anyone as sovereign people. We were all born sovereign and hold that authority over ourselves. Again, I'm one man with an opinion, and I'm very interested on everyone's thoughts on this. Okay, so that's 3 different perspectives. Now I'm gonna stop screen share and take some hands here. I think I saw Marvin's first, so let me go to Marvin.
Yes, can you hear me?
I can
Yes.
hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with that video. After being in this movement for 7+ years, after a while you get tired and everything just it seems like it repeating itself. And I agree with Boyd on some of that stuff. The way Anna explained it, they put us all under contract, and we all have to get out of underneath that contract. And then to do that, we have to do the paperwork. That was my opinion on that. And I yield.
Thank you. Thank you, Marvin. Glad to see you here. I'm glad you could make it.
Thank you, ma'am. I've been sick, but I'm here.
All right. So we got David.
Hi, Louise.
Hi, welcome.
First time attending this. I didn't know if this was open to people that were already part of the advisory committee or on the task force or not, or other people, but wanted to jump in and get and see what this is all about. Think we're doing an outstanding service to the assemblies here with this. I missed most of Rave's recording. That's that you just ended on, so I can't really offer much of a view on that. Boyd's, unlike Marvin, I agree with probably about 90% of what he said on here, but I have to agree. We do have to, just like we need to correct our status and standing, to rebut presumptions and to show that those contracts, that we don't stand under those contracts any longer. I am glad to see that he showed that we should join together in the assemblies, and that's a body politic is what we're doing here. It's not a private member association by any means, legal or lawful definition of that, but we are part of a body politic claiming our birthright inheritance on the land and soil. And I've heard you use that term before, Louise, in some of your documents. I love that because it really is. We gain our sovereignty, in my view, from our divine creator God, who is sovereign and gave that to it at birth. The presumption was, while we were still innocent and had our identity stolen from us and everything else, that the state gave us our rights and our privileges and stole our identity and contracted us into that. Yes, it's fraudulent ab initio. Yes, it's wrong. But if we don't stand up and rebut it and presume it as sovereigns and reclaim our sovereignty, then we have a presumptive tacit admission of that's true and that applies to me, even if out of ignorance. And that's the way I view that. But I wished I would have heard Rave's comments. I know she's got a lot of good thoughts on that, but it's a little late for the meeting here. But yeah, most of what Boyd said, I think, is true, but his question is a legitimate one. And I think 99.99% of everybody knew coming in and getting papered up, which I know he's not, asked that question repeatedly. Well, why do I need to do all this? If it's all fraud, and I'm already a sovereign and I was born one, why can't I just claim that and do that? Because you don't have the standing to do that when you're still a US citizen. You just don't have the status to do that. You're still a citizen subject, whether you realize it or not. And so that has to be established on the public record, just like they established your identity on the public record as being a subject and a slave within their system with no rights. So we've got that priority status correction, or that lien on our name now that they can't supersede anymore. So yeah, with that, I yield.
Okay. So let's unpack this a little bit more. Let me go back to Rave's. Let me see here. Okay. And this is a recap of what Rave said for your benefit there, David. Now, so I was trying to comprehend the points that Rave was making. So she, as far as I can understand, she said, fight for the Americans who are declared, not all the people who have not declared. We can't interfere with the people's right to contract to be United States citizens. Make the strategy simple. Write down the list of things we want done, serve the de facto the orders, tell them the time we will show up to enforce those orders. And if they don't stand down or comply with the orders, we charge them with treason. We have to set up ourselves as declared Americans first and our government. Then we will have to have a place for the United States citizens to come when and if they choose to correct their status. We do not negotiate. We are the employers. Just give the orders. Everything happens at one time by giving the order. David?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. That's excellent. Great. I'm sure that's a great summation point by point of what she was saying in there. If I can quickly just comment on all 7 of those points. Number one, 1000% agree with it. And it's not to be cold-hearted thinking, hey, if you're not in the boat by now, we're just going to leave you out there floundering in the sea. But we have to primarily fight for Americans now who are declared. We have to get our assembly standing up with all 4 pillars established. That is just paramount importance. You know, it's the old, you can lead a horse to the water, but you can't make them drink mentality. You know, we give the people the education, the materials and everything else, but that dovetails right into her number 2. If people want to continue to knowingly or unknowingly and willfully or unwillfully contract to be United States citizens, they have the right to do that. They have their right to do that just as much as we do. So 100% agree with her on that too. We cannot interfere with people's right. We don't want the courts and the government to do that. So we can't do that to other people either. 100%. Now, as far as number 3 goes, you know, I know that's a big part of what you're doing and accomplishing in this task force. So I'm not going to come in here with a bunch of opinions on that. I've watched your training videos in both seasons so far on this, and I'm planning on plugging into this, especially if I'm accepted on board as a PKTF liaison. Still in the process of that. So you know, leave that one alone. But I 100% agree with 4 too. We're a body politic, you know, once we join our assemblies. We're here to help allow, you know, to provide that ship, that boat, that safe harbor for all the other people still out there in the sea to come and join us and help us in our common goal and vision here that we have. That is as far as number 5 goes, that's where I would have a little bit of a variation on that. So we don't negotiate. That's true. We are the employers. We just give the orders. I would say if all of our assemblies were in the position that Ohio's in right now, we'd probably have a lot more clout and a lot more respect by the other side as being their employers. I think they're establishing that rapidly there. It's much more of an uphill battle and more difficult to do that when you don't have your 4 pillars established. Albeit on the face of it, that statement's 100% true as well. That is where we should come from. They're our employees. We are the employers. Yeah, I mean, you can't argue against that. But yeah, 6 and 7, I'll leave alone, but it's great. And if that's the essence of what she said in there, you know, once again, Boyd's her statements, got to agree with about 95% or more of that to the T. So I yield.
Thanks, David. Okay, so now I'm going to present to you all my conundrum. This is what I send Anna emails every now and then and say, I have a conundrum, Anna. You said this on this page, and then you said this on this other page. How does those 2 go together? Because it sounds contradictory. That's create conundrums in my mind, certain things. Now I have one with this. So, and I want us to analyze it. So I see Rave said this, and then we have, where's boys? Oh, here it is. Okay. So it's like we can't agree to both of them because they're not the same thing. So let me unpack a little. So Rave is saying, we have to give them a right to contract and honor that. Okay. And that's what we've been taught. Okay. Then Boyd's saying, yes, we need to give them, they do have a right to contract, but the contract is fraud from the beginning. So is there really a contract that we are trying to protect their right to? And then from my end, from my perspectives that I listed out earlier, I'm saying it's crime. It's not about the contract. It's not about the law. It's about the crime. All that was done with that birth registration, quote unquote, contract was criminal. So what are we protecting? I say we're supposed to be protecting the people from the crime as the American government, because we are the government. And when we view this as protecting the people from the crime, we're actually fighting for everybody in that sense, not just status corrected Americans, because we are going after the crime. So you see the conundrum? We have not three different perspectives, but a different way of looking at things. And then we have to decide, are the premises sound? Meaning, okay, so Rave, we need to protect people's right to contract. We know that's true. But the question is, they had a right to contract, and on the land, according to our law, that contract must be fully disclosed in order for it to be valid. So did they contract? Are we protecting their right to contract when we are saying that the contract that you signed was not fully disclosed and you were trafficked into the C jurisdiction, but you're still a U.S. citizen?
May I?
Yes.
100%. Well, I was waiting for it. You just dropped the boot on it right there. That melds in my mind the two opposing viewpoints, or the two conflicting viewpoints together. You can still defend their right to contract, but give them that full disclosure. And you said that we're supposed to fight for all Americans, both declared and undeclared, right to uninhibited and unhindered contract, but give them the facts so they can do it with full knowledge and full disclosure. And then if they want to go ahead and choose to do that, they can do that uninhibited. But yeah, I mean, the essence of what you just said, that was my takeaway from that. And so really, you can have both viewpoints being copacetic with each other with that understanding of what you just said, Louise, in my opinion, for sure. That was, I was waiting for that boot to drop there.
Well, that's how I have to reconcile conundrums, because you can't say one thing and then the other thing and they both fit together, because I can't say you have a right to contract, so you are a U.S. citizen, but the contract you signed is invalid, so you're a U.S. citizen there too? No, it doesn't go. So we have to be consistent. This is why I'm going through this exercise with us, so we can hone in on what's sound, what's unsound, because the American public gonna call us on it. Like, you don't make sense. That's double speak. So am I a U.S. citizen or am I not? Was the contract fraud or was it not? Was it a crime or was it not a crime? We have to get consistent with this.
But if we're not U.S. citizens, then why are we joining assemblies? Why are we I'm sorry, if there are no U.S. citizens, because it's all fraud from the beginning, then why have people status? Why have them join a body politic or anything else? What we're doing is meaningless at that point.
That's what Boyd came up with. That's what Boyd was saying. Okay, so so let's think about that one. Let's unpack that. Why would they have to status correct? And this was my response to Boyd. If you're looking at it as a crime, which it is, the people who signed the contract have presumptively committed a crime, presumptively. We just know they signed it. We're assuming they didn't know what it was, okay? Based on the historical evidence. They didn't know that this is what they were signing up. So they would have to tell us that I didn't know it was a crime and I am not being complicit in it. Not about a contract, but about the crime. Because we're going to start taking names and names of people who is treasonous, people who are human trafficking, because we know, let's be clear, every mom and dad who signed that birth certificate is potentially human trafficking. And I say potentially because we don't know if they knew they were doing it or if they don't know that they were doing it. We're presumptive in that respect as the American government. We're presuming that all those people who put their names on the birth registration didn't know that it was fraud. That's a presumption. So why do we have them sign or declare their statuses? Because we as the American government have to make sure we are identifying who's complicit and who's not. So they have to say under affidavit, under oath, that no, I was not complicit. This is, I did not know I was doing this, because that's how we do crime anyway. In order to charge someone with the crime, we have to know that they were willing, and they were willing. They did it willingly. If they didn't do it willingly, then we can't say that the intent was there. So we're gonna have a big problem saying it was a crime when they didn't intend to perform. They didn't intend to do a crime. So that's where these, and this is how I reconcile it, David, in my mind, is, yeah, they're going to have to do the paperwork, because if they don't, then we're presuming against them, just like the de facto was presuming against them the other way. They have to speak for themselves.
Right. And a sworn testimony in the form of an affidavit, not an affidavit, but in the form of an affidavit, establishes the law. So that comes and just says, yeah, if you're willing to establish that, which is what our 1779 declarations and our 928 documentation does, then it can't be rebutted. And if it does, it has to also be done in the form of a sworn testimony, signed under penalty of perjury, just like we did. And I agree that it's safe to say that I would say 99.999% of all mothers had no idea that they were informants and handing their children over into the system. But you're right, it is a presumption. So now you have to rebut that presumption, and you got to do it in paper, putting your neck out there on the line saying, no, that was false. This is the truth, and it has to be done the way we do it through our paperwork. And I think I heard somebody maybe say before, yeah, that's right. There's more than one way to status correct, and it doesn't have the corner on the market to do that officially. But, we do it in no uncertain terms, and we do it with the means and the goal of bringing people back into the land and soil and putting them together into a body politic of assembled people on the land and soil. So that's my thoughts on that too. But thank you for breaking it down more.
Yeah, this gets, I mean, when we're researching these this evidence and this history, and as I'm digging into Anna's articles, these conundrums come up in my mind, and I have to reconcile them and how we're speaking to the public. Because if the American State Nationals was talking to me and telling me this, and I was on the other fence, on the other side of the fence, these are the things that I would challenge you on. So when we go out there in public trying to present this to them, we have to understand that what we're saying sounds contradictory. So let's get clear on what we're saying. Now, the other way that not the other way, but the particular way I began to approach this, understanding that I'm addressing this crime, is when I came up with when we came up with the phase 1A with the teeth. Now we talk in this discussion here, we're saying, don't fight for the Americans, fight only for the declared ones. you know, the people have the right to contract and all this. So I went for all Americans because all Americans are being perpetrated against. As the government, it is our obligation to go for all Americans. And when I say all Americans, I mean declared and undeclared. Simply because of that special concurrent general jurisdiction that Rave was talking about. If you are on the land and the soil and these actions are taking place, if in the hospital down there in Ohio or down there in Illinois or Tennessee, if in that hospital, they gave you a birth registration and you signed it, this is happening on the land and soil. So we have to say something about it as the American government. We have to say this is a crime, and we have to let the people know we're not tolerating this. This is not allowed on the land and soil.
May I?
Yes.
Yeah, Louise. So since we know that doctors and nurses and hospital staff and everything else are essentially conscripted military officers, and if those births are taking place within that hospital structure and edifice, is that land and soil at the time?
Yes.
Okay. And
Yeah.
I'm asking that out of innocence and or ignorance because I'm trying to put that together in my head. Were we on their jurisdiction at the time, you know, knowingly, unknowingly, but
I see what you're saying because it's military. So the military, you know, is giving us this paper. So are you saying that this is the sea jurisdiction?
yeah, they unlawfully took over a land and soil structure, built their structure on it and made it a military seated, so to speak, jurisdiction, you know, by operation. Unlawful be it, but you know, I mean, I'm just wondering, is there any teeth to that? Could that claim be made? That's how they established the contract, even though it was fraudulent, like you said, the mother didn't know what she was doing. But just a thought, just a very vague theory, because I couldn't support that. I couldn't stand up and defend that idea. It's just a thought.
Okay, yeah. So in the strategies, you'll read where I say, well, what Anna was just saying, they encroached. Now, that was in one of my premises. They encroached upon our jurisdiction. They're not even supposed to be here on the 50 states. They're supposed to be over in their enclaves. I know the military have their own little enclaves, and then the municipal have the Washington, D.C. They're not supposed to be here. And so we're addressing that at the same time, the fact that they encroached. We're addressing that at the same time as we're addressing the man and woman signing the paper.
Yes.
So yeah, they're not, I would say they're military officers. So yeah, they are in the sea jurisdiction committing their crimes on the land and soil, but us with superior concurrent jurisdiction, we're supposed to stop that.
100%. 100%. And you can and you can say that we shouldn't, I think, was it Rave, this is we shouldn't continue to fight for every undocumented, undeclared American anymore. I mean, I would say she's right at such a point as they've been given full disclosure as to the contract that they presumptively entered into willfully. Then when they're shown that no, and more than likely it wasn't willfully, and they come to a knowledge of whether they did or didn't willfully hold on to that contract or enter into that contract, but then they continue to not do something about it, i.e. get papered up, join their state assembly, whatever, then no, we should not continue to fight for them anymore.
Yeah, so now they become criminals. I mean, now they get arrested.
They're complicit. Yeah, they're complicit in it for absolutely.
And that's where the phase 1A is powerful in that my approach to the crime is it's all crime. So all Americans, when we go out there in our public meetings and when we present the fact that this is human trafficking, we're enforcing our public law because we're not allowing the human trafficking that's done by birth registration. So those no longer can be done. So, but what you have to do is you either have to say you've been hoodwinked and you didn't know that that signature on that paper was human trafficking, you have to say that in your affidavit, or you have to, or you have to declare your rightful birthright political status, because United States citizen, according to a birth registration, is no longer. It's not possible because it's criminal. Now, if you're still going to claim you're one by that birth registration, then that means you're complicit.
And it's the same thing with, the fiat military script that we use, the Federal Reserve dollars. I mean, that same unknowing, I mean, they say it's a privilege and a use tax to use that military script and to be able to, quote, discharge your debts and not pay for your debts. Although they don't tell us that, HJR 192 was out there and we should be able to discharge all our public debts and balance the books, offset everything and zero out the books. So did people know that and understand that? Did people get explained to that their Federal Reserve dollars aren't actual money, they're promissory debt notes, and that's it? No. So did they, are they complicit in that fraud, of perpetrating that fraud? Not until they've been explained that and made known of that, and then they have an understanding of it.
Yeah, and that's what we have one for the Federal Reserve notes too.
I love that. Yeah.
I'm going for the birth registration. I'm going for the Federal Reserve notes. Those two things.
Well, that's why I brought that up, because it's the counterpart of, your whole foundation of where we're approaching this out into the public, and with the officials and the public in general. So.
Okay. I want y'all to think more about the conundrums that come up in your mind as you looking at the implementation guides and the strategies. Now, let's unpack this one. The one about the county. Where does the county come in at? Let's go back here. The county. What before I move to the county, let's go to this one. The strategy, write down the list of things we want done, serve them orders, tell them what we want to do, give the order, and then if they don't abide by the order, charge them with treason. Okay. From the idea of how we approach the de facto with our demands, how do we effectively approach them? We can give orders. Our orders in our jurisdiction is called directives. I know assemblies write up their directives and send them to the governors and things like that. That's what we call orders. Now, assemblies have been doing that. Now, Boyd says, why we even have to do that? Just beat the government. We don't, with the strategies and the implementation guides, especially the peacekeeping phase 3, I have phases, and this is what she was referring to. I have a phase 1 where here, let me go to it. Let me see if I can go to it. Where we have, not that one. Let's go down to the peacekeepers.
To answer Boyd's thesis on that, about why can't we just be the government, though? And like Anna's always said, the sea jurisdiction, the air jurisdiction is never going to go away, and neither will the land and soil jurisdiction. We're not here to replace it. We're here to establish ourselves on the land and soil jurisdiction and get them to recognize it. So yeah, we can just stand up and be our government, but we have to acknowledge that there still exists, and we have to do the things that we're doing here to keep us in our own lane, as Anna says, on the land and soil. So I mean, you can understand why he would say, well, if it's all fraud and everything, why do we even have to do that? Why can't we just stand up, be our government? Because we have to formally recognize it. Like you said, establish the directives and everything else to our employees that still presume that they're running the show and controlling everything.
We have to get ourselves in position. And this is my thing. We have to get ourselves in position to receive the control of the government. We have to get you already mentioned, got to get our state assemblies stood up. We got to get our county assembly stood up. Now, I'm gonna go here. See, the government, when we talk about the government, when we talk about the government, I see the government is on the county. The county assembly is the government. The other instrumentalities, even the state assembly and the federation, all those are support instrumentalities. So to get our when the government is transferred, the control of the government is transferred, it will have to be transferred to a county. It'll go through a state because they're the interface that the county has with the federal subcontractors. So it has to go through that way to get to the county. But I want to keep that perspective that we're trying to get the transference of the governmental power to the county. And in order for us to do that, I don't see that we can just send out a directive or an order and say, this is what I want done. I'm coming here on such and such date, and you need to hand over your keys. Okay, if we do that, who's going to accept the keys? Is a county assembly standing? Is your state assembly standing? Is your county sheriff standing? And assemblies do send their directives now, and they just get ignored. The governor doesn't recognize them, or the county sheriffs don't recognize them. They get ignored. And being ignored is, I call it passive aggressiveness. When you're having a conversation with somebody and they're ignoring you, there's some friction going on. If you're an employer-employer relationship, there should be a conversation going on. And yes, I call it negotiation, because you're not ready to take on the control. We're not ready to take on the control, so I call it a negotiation. And that's why I have these 3 phases. And this is what we were talking about. And realistically, thinking about it tactically, as a tactical move, when we go and give the directives or give the orders, we have to have it in place how those orders are going to be received. So I have it and we have to send the right people. So who in our government, in our American government structure, are the ones who's responsible for giving the orders? And then who in our American government are responsible for the ones to go in there and accept the keys or the control from them? And who in our American government are the ones who's going to enforce the order when we take their name down as treason because they're not cooperating or capitulating or standing down? I see that has to be done in phases. We have to put the right people in the right places to even have the operation to go smoothly. Assemblies are giving out directives or giving out orders to the governor, but what happens after that? If it's not done in cooperation and collaboration with your peacekeepers, who are the enforcing arm, then what does it make us look like? We don't have any way to enforce what you just sent out a directive for. So that's why I see it as a negotiation. It has to be laid out. I have in an assembly, we have the assembly liaisons, the PKTF liaisons. We created that in our structure to be those peacekeepers who go out to the de facto and have the conversations. That's what they're there for. In our American government structure, that's what we created them for them to go out there and break the ice, establish an understanding of who we are and put them in their place and explain to them what their place is. That's who the liaison was for. So that's why I say, that's why I put it the way that I put it in the structure that I put it in. They're our first line. Then I have the liaison and the county assembly sheriff. Now, if this is not the best strategy, we'll get to it. We'll have to iron this out as the training, as we get to the training part, to say, well, which peacekeeping officer goes in this spot? Which peacekeeping officer goes in that spot? Go ahead, David.
No, I'm glad you're touching up on this right here. I'm glad you're spending some time on this. I recall in one of the other previous sessions, of which I didn't attend but watched all of them, I believe there was a discussion with yourself and another gentleman at the time as to where do we start? Do we give the directives? Do we put the emphasis on educating and trying to make a change down there on the county level, where yes, the soil, nation, state, little p people, the sovereignty originates from, and establish it there. But yet we don't have our General Assembly, our state government set up. My understanding is more than likely most General Assemblies are getting the state level officials and everything else elected and set up and established, and then you start seeing counties being populated and established, and county reeves are being elected, and you probably already may or may not have a state militia commander yet. You may or may not have a continental marshal, either on your county or the state or whatever, but more than likely everything's happening from the state on down. So I would personally think it's great that you got to start from the top, because the LEOs, by and large, they're uninformed. Like Boyd said, they're ignorant. They're not taught to know law or understand the law or anything. So they're not going to necessarily recognize our paperwork or even accept it, even if they weren't brainwashed into thinking that we're a bunch of radical sovereign citizens. So when the directive, to use our word, comes down from the top, that, hey, start leaving these people alone. Case in point, Lisa Schaefer saying that that's what's starting to happen in Ohio now. They'll listen to that. They have to. That's their officers, that's their commanders, that's their people telling them. So yeah, I don't know if this is set in stone yet, but my opinion is, yeah, it'll have to be changed on that Secretary of State, Governor, Attorney General level before our county sheriffs, reeves, deputy sheriffs, peacekeepers will have a chance to come stand alongside them and be looked at as their equal on the land and soil part. To me, that's how I would perceive this will go down. If we try to do it from the county level first and work back in reverse or some other variation of that, I think that's what we've all been trying to do all along, either out here before we were status corrected and came to the assemblies or not. And by and large, it doesn't work. Yeah, like they said, they hear us, but it goes in one ear and out the other, and they just ignore it. There's no teeth to it, to use your term. So yeah, I think that's great that this focus here gets hammered out, and then that's the plan of action. Where do we start? Where's the second line? Where's the third line? Like you said, it's more of an operation, or what was the word you used after directive earlier?
Operation, probably.
Yeah. I mean, it's more of a military tactic, in a way. It really is.
Yeah.
But it's strategy. So
It's strategy. Yeah, we have to strategize. The assemblies have to strategize. If you're going to send out a directive, what is your strategy in sending it out? What's lined up to get that enforced? That type of thing. Now, I forgot the PKTF assembly liaison, and then you have the militia commander on the assembly that goes out with the liaison. It's not here, but I got it in my other documents. You see this blue and yellow? That's me changing everything as we talk, and we add this and take stuff away. Every time you see blues and yellow, that's us changing stuff. So you got the assembly liaison and the militia commander are the two that goes out at the first line. And then the second line would be the liaisons in the county assembly, sheriff. Now, this is an interesting thing. The county assembly, now, the state assembly do not elect the county sheriff. The county nationals elect the county sheriff. And so as I'm approaching this, I'm seeing how the state and the county assemblies, and this is my approach, for the state and the county assemblies be seated at the same time. The highest authority we have is actually in the county. We have to pass through the state to get to the county. The highest authority we have is in the county. So I see them both having to go together. And I know Anna was talking about, is it necessary to have the land and soil separated? In my mind, no. The authority comes from the county, but the county can't wield its authority if it's not protected by the state. And the state is supposed to be protecting the county from the federal subcontractors, which—
May I, Louise? And I know Marvin's got his hand up. My quick response to that is though I agree with you on the face of it, but how can that be done if there's no county reeve, no deputy reeve, no enforcement are on the county level.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how can they roll out together and do that? And that's assuming you have a state marshal at arms, you have a state militia commander, you have state sheriff, you know, and so forth and so on. That statistically, it doesn't look like that's happening on the General Assemblies, that all of a sudden you start seeing a bunch of counties populating with all the enforcement level or committee or assembly formation concurrent with the state assembly formation. That's, I mean, that's kind of the way I'm seeing it.
Yeah, it's not happening that way. So let's go to let's
Yeah,
unpack it some more. Let's unpack
I'll shut up and let Marvin talk. Hold on.
We're gonna go to Marvin, then we're gonna go to Richard. Can't hear you, Marvin. Okay, we can't hear Marvin, so we're gonna have to come back to you.
No, I'm can you hear me now? I'm sorry.
I can hear you.
Let's see what the deal was. Let's see. I'm a peacekeeping task force liaisons here on Texas, and we don't have a militia lead right now. So I've been steadily going, you know, talking to the sheriffs and stuff. I put them all on my Facebook because they're all on Facebook, all the counties, you know, every one of them. I'm following every one of them, and they can see the stuff I'm posting and the sheriff's directives, everything that I'm posting, they can see. And that's about all I can do. I mean, we're going to definitely have to go have a higher power as far as like higher echelon up the food chain to give them directives. And that's where I agree with the gentleman now, David. But yeah, I'm doing everything I can possibly do. And, you know, I've not gotten any response from them. But, you know, I yield.
All right. All right. Thanks, Marvin. Richard?
How you guys doing tonight? Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Yeah, I'm on my phone, so I'm sorry if I'm garbled up a bit. I want to say a couple of things. I know that we'd spoke before, and ideally what we could try and get to happen would be to have the state and the county stood up at the same time. If you can get all the officers necessary to stand up a state and stand up a county all in one county, you could do them both at the same time. I know we had discussed that before, but the odds of that happening are pretty slim. The other thing is I'm with everybody in the same respect that once we send out our directives or our orders, how do we enforce them if they just ignore it? I know we've discussed that before too. We can charge them with treason, but where can we actually bring that to bear on them so that they can feel the punishment for the crimes that they're committing? Like you said, we can notice them and we can talk to them, but if they're not going to just acquiesce to our demands, then how are we going to enforce that? I mean, it would be nice, and I'm an optimist, so I'm always looking forward to sitting down with someone and talking about stuff, and they immediately go, "Oh, I didn't see it that way. You're correct. Wow!" And like the flip, you know, the switch, but that never happens. I do know that on Illinois, where I'm at, we don't have a whole lot of active members in the assemblies. But the few that we have are trying to coordinate. And one of the things I know that we all, I think, kind of agreed upon was that we aren't used to discussing openly our knowledge, our info, and sharing it. And I know that we have conversations coming up that we are going to have with our county sheriffs or with local political people, the mayors or the aldermen or whoever that we are trying to inform and educate about the crimes that are going on. And I think that's what we started doing is we're starting a series of meetings, just kind of like a social meeting to get together and just kind of like an open forum chat to help us practice our conversations so that we can present information in an organized fashion and not get flustered when the cops start screaming at you to give me your driver's license. Because in my opinion, that's a big part of it is being able to maintain your composure during the times that we're having these conversations because so many people out there are so brainwashed. I talk to people at work. I work at a factory, and I talk to people at work about it all the time, and they all just mostly look at me and just nod their head and go, "Oh, whatever." They don't want to believe it. So and I do get a little pushback from some rebuttals about this. I was talking about some of the laws and how they're repugnant to the Constitution, and they're unjust, and they're not even lawful. And the one kid said, well, the states all have the right under this code to write their own legislation. I said, yes, as long as it's not in conflict with federal regulations or the Constitution. And then he was like standing there like he didn't know that before. So like he'd only done enough reading and research to learn just the surface smarts and not dig any deeper. He never came back and talked to me again, though. But yes, that is one thing I do think. It's hard to try and get everything coordinated to come off all at once. I think some people may not like the term that you use, negotiate, because we are negotiators. We are the employers to the employees, and there is no negotiation. However, we don't have the people and the push and the teeth to make it not a negotiation. So we're going to come at them and say, hey, this is what we want you to do. And they're going to say, well, we're not going to do that. And we're going to say, well, we want you to do this and this at least by this date. We'll give them 1 or 2 to work on instead of the whole list. That's, in my idea, that's the negotiation part of it. It's not that we're going to say, well, okay, you can let some people do it, not some people. No, it's all a crime. Everyone's out of it. And it's got to be that way. But we have to negotiate how we're going to take control of that and how we're going to make that happen. That's why I think the word negotiate is a good fit for that. That's all I got. I yield. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, David.
Yeah, while Richard was talking, and I mean, you can't argue with what every point he just made. I've recently been rereading for the second time Anna's constitutional enforcement seminar that she put out back in 2019, even before the PKTF charter was established, and I'm sure it was in forethought of bringing them up and establishing the PKTF at that point. But again, here's all this time passed by, and we're no further along of having that enforcement arm of it. And there's such a fine balancing line there when you even use the word enforcement, because it has the stigma in most people's mind of force. They look at the word force and enforce, and we're peacekeepers. We're trying to use the law of the land to be peacekeepers and to enforce the public law. And that's our right. That's our job and responsibility as civic responsibility as nationals and state citizens, if we're elected to be so, to do that. But yet, like Richard said, the ignorance of the people that we're talking to and the willful denial of it because they don't see any repercussions. And here's a good parallel thought. So in the litigation committees, they're all over the country right now. There's a lot of good litigation studies and stuff that are open generally to all the different states. And one of the processes that they're doing is common law due process for the other side, giving them a chance to correct things, administrative due process. But eventually, true bills get served to them, and then liens get on their public bonds or their personal property and stuff like that, following an administrative due process. So something like that is going to have to be established, like, okay, Mr. Attorney General, Mrs. Governor, Mrs. Secretary of State, so we've noticed you all these times now, and we gave you proper notice of our status and standing, proper notice that you're supposed to be serving us and acknowledging our rights and the fact that we're doing things lawfully here, and you're ignoring that. And although we don't have any law enforcement to counteract yours, now what are we going to do? And that's where we're at. That's the conundrum that we're at right now. And so what Richard's saying is true, but we have to have a contingency plan, like you say, Louise, until we do have that. And it would be great in what I call a Walgreens perfect world if we could stand up the states and the counties all together. It would be fabulous. But yet, when you set out with this task force in mind, Louise, I'm sure you said to yourself, we can't wait another 3, 4, 5, 10 years from now for all 50 of the union, assemblies to get together and start to even get close to where Ohio's at before we finally say, okay, team, now we're ready to hit the field. This is, this is like a play action maneuver every single play of the game here while we're doing this. And unfortunately, I'm not going to say the de facto has us behind the 8 ball, but we're at a disadvantage until we have enforcement, constitutional enforcement, peaceful inhabitant on the land kind of enforcement, but nonetheless enforcement that they recognize. And again, it's great that Lisa Schaefer can come on and start to say that they're starting to get that recognized now on Ohio. A lot of the states are nowhere near close to that, unfortunately. So we have to have a contingency, as you say, Louise, as to what are we going to do when we've noticed, given them our demands, put it out there on the line, done everything right according to the strategy task force that we have here, and yet there's still nothing moving forward. Then what do? Do we retreat and say, well, we gave it a shot, rah team, or where do we go from there? I mean, and that's the frustrating part. I mean, it doesn't mean we give up. Of course not. That's why we're here, but it's frustrating to see that that's the position that we're in. So
this is how I addressed all of that there, David. Okay. I watched the military operation that they've been executing with Trump, and I get a lot of insight from how they do it. And the way I operate is I look at people who's effective at what they do, and I try to copy that. Not the crime part, because they're effectively doing crime too, but the tactics and stuff. So this is how I addressed all that. Now, I said that we have to start at the top. We got to start with the president and the federal government. Whoever's up at the top, we have to bring them to the table. And that's why I got the diplomatic immunity status conversation and the capitulation negotiation with Trump meeting. That's there at the top. Well, if that's the effective strategy, we have to do the same thing in the land and soil jurisdiction. Who's at the top in our jurisdiction? The county sheriff. That's why I put the county sheriff in the strategy. The county sheriff has to be in the strategy because he or she is our highest officer. So where does the county sheriff though fit in the plan? The county sheriff fits when it comes to crime. I am addressing the crime. I'm not addressing the laws. I'm addressing the crime. I don't have to sit down. I don't want us to sit down at these meetings and try to convince the people that they've been hoodwinked. Educate the people on this law, constitution, and that. I don't want that to be where our conversations are hinging. Because I didn't want that to happen, because people are, like you just said, I'm talking to people and they don't know what I'm talking about, and they're debating me on what the law means and all that. Nope. I took that all out the picture by addressing the crime. And how does the conversation go now? The birth registration is a crime. It's human trafficking, and it's outlawed, and nobody can do that anymore. And if you continue to do that, then you will be charged with human trafficking. Any questions? That's where the conversation goes. Now they'll start asking questions, but now they're starting to ask questions because their butt is in the sling. Because now we're telling them you're being complicit, so you need to correct your actions as well. And I can't help them if they keep undermining me trying to help them. I'm trying to free you from this slave birth certificate registration, and you keep fighting for it. So how I'm going to rectify that? Tell you it's a crime, and if you want to continue to do it, this is your penalty. And I know I'm sounding harsh, but that's really what we're dealing with. We're dealing with crime. We're not dealing with the law. I mean, I'm not trying to, and I think we get in these debates with law because we don't understand that's common law, that's ecclesiastical law, and that's maritime law, and we're debating maritime law against common law. and we go back and forth. And they both separate laws, but we don't recognize the separate jurisdictions. I'm not getting into that conversation with the American public or with our federal some contractors. The conversation I want us to get into, this is a crime, it has to stop, and this is how we're gonna make it stop. That's how our county sheriffs come in. The assemblies do elect their county sheriffs. Some of the assemblies have county sheriffs elected, some don't. But I want the assemblies to start thinking about that. Our highest officer is our county sheriff. Now, what did the what did the de facto do as far as their strategy went? You know, they had that 500,000 list of indictments of these people that they were going to be coming after. Well, we need to start writing our 500,000 list of indictments that we're going to come after when we're ready. But they need to know that they're on the list, or they need to know they need to get off the list. That's where our county sheriffs come in and our continental marshals. No, not everybody, not every assembly have a continental marshal, not every assembly have a county sheriff. But we can start putting the pressure on. The pressure is just like the military put their pressure on. They had 500,000 people before they started arresting folks because they was taking the evidence. What we do now is take the evidence until we're ready to make to execute and bring people on charges. How do we get the evidence? We go out there and we tell them, this is the crime, stop doing it. If you want to prove that you're not complicit, write your affidavit. If you continue to do it, then I'm taking, your name gets on the paper.
May I interject for just a second?
Huh?
May I interject for just a second on what you're saying? Because I agree, you're right. You have to let them notice them that you're committing crimes, and these are the established penalties for those crimes and everything else. Until we do get our county sheriffs, until we do get our state level peacekeepers in place, to have some enforcement, do we go to JAG? You know, because we're presumed still under military occupation, you know, under the Lieber Code and everything like that. That's what they're operating on under us, knowing. And so do we have some kind of place to go and at least then say, okay, we've noticed our state officials, we've noticed our county de facto officials now, we've noticed them with the crime, we've given them an opportunity to come clean on it, to correct it, and this is where we're at, but we don't have our assemblies fully stood up yet. We're trying to stay in honor. We're trying to stay and do things right. Can we go and post something at that level to, how do I want to word it? Earmark it to where we can then go ahead and try these cases within our own courts when we have our General Assembly stood up.
Well, I'm sure we can get to that point, where, because it's gonna have to get to that point, but let's remember this too. It doesn't have to be our court to try these people. It can be the C jurisdiction courts. Part of some of the strategy was if it's a U.S. citizen and they're claiming to be a U.S. citizen and they still continue to commit the crime, you send the presentment to them about their citizen to try their citizen for this. If they don't do something, then we do something. So we can go that route. The other thing too, I want us to think about, we saying the state and the county assemblies aren't standing, but what we're trying to do is do it systematically. Let's not look at all of the 100 counties that you have on your state. Look at one. We're trying to do this in one county per state. Now, the original plan is to go and do it in the county with the Capitol building in it, because that's the highest officer is in that Capitol. So you need a sheriff in that Capitol. If you can't do it, if you don't do it with the strategy with the sheriff that's in that county, then do another county, any county, choose your county. We just need one county. We need one sheriff in that one county, and we need strategy between that state assembly and that county assembly. This county is going to be the one that's going to stand together with this state. The state and this county is going to stand together. It's going to have a sheriff. We're going to execute first line, second line, third line from that county. not all the counties in your state, because if we can get it done in one county, then we have that inertia to start county by county with a strategy of how we're going to do this. And if something doesn't work or something gets difficult, we can alter it as we go, as we learn. And I think this is good strategy to focus on one county at a time, because you know, you eat elephant one piece at a time. This is a huge undertaking. And I don't want us to get overwhelmed and think we can't do it because we got all these states and all these counties not standing. Let's focus on one county. And I think we can do it that way.
I see your point. You got to lay a foundation. You have an example for others to follow by, and you kind of build momentum upon that. And I guess what I would ask at this point is so we find a county, whatever county that might be, they've got a county reeve now, and maybe or maybe not a couple deputy reeves. You know, maybe they don't have full standing county assembly with, you know, all their committees and everything standing up, but the establishment of the county reeve is the starting point, is what you're saying then, to having that county assembly going, correct? That
Yeah.
single county assembly. So once that county reeves there, whether he's elected or appointed or whatever, then and recognized, then and you've got the state on board with them, whether there's a state sheriff or not, you start going from there, or should there concurrently be a state sheriff and then in that one county a county sheriff as well? And does there need to be a continental marshal other than within the region itself, or does there have to be a continental marshal on the state itself too for this plan to go forward? Or
so we need a county sheriff on that state, on that county, whatever particular county that they're going for, that state is choosing. And then we need a militia commander. And I say a militia commander and a liaison first because they are neutral parties. So they go first. After they done let these people already know with the declarations, the education, all that, then the county sheriff comes and joins them. And so the assembly needs to have a liaison, they need to have a militia commander, and they need to have a county sheriff in one particular county. After the county sheriff gets involved, and we have to use our county sheriff because they're the highest officer we have.
Absolutely.
And the coroner.
Within that county, within that county, they are for sure. You know, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. So, and we can focus on the one county. We can't focus on the whole state all at the same time. That's not going to happen. But we can focus on a county. So when the county assembly sheriff gets involved, now the state and the county are starting to strategize and think to stand the state. But they're going to stand the state and the county at the same time. So they're going to start putting their officers in place. And that type of thing is going to happen at this point while they're thinking about their strategy.
Question here, Louise, because you got first line PKTF assembly liaisons, and I know you said you had forgot to add in militia commander on the state level as well. And those two are kind of acting in tandem here on this first line. And the PKTF assembly liaison role is that much more effective with the presence of a militia commander, is what you're saying. If the PKTF liaison was the only one on Louisiana or New York or whatever to go out here on their own trying to do the first line objective, it's not going to be nearly as impactful as if we have the militia commander already on that state as well, correct?
Well, I would say I chose the commander and the liaison because they're the neutral parties.
Oh, agreed.
Now, I don't know if the commander is elected or appointed on a state. I
believe that's an elected position, if I'm not mistaken, but I better go back and check myself too.
Okay. So I think it's elected on our state too. Now, one of the strategies that Ohio had in their militia commander and their sheriff is they showed their public elections that was posted in the newspaper to the de facto, and that earned some credibility, that earn some respect. So we have the liaison is elected, but they're not elected publicly. But the militia commander is elected publicly. So we have those two in that position in the forefront. So we can, I mean, Adam and Andrew had a good approach that way. And then the Joe, the PKTF director, he had mentioned a strategy. He had mentioned it too. He said, what about getting the recognition of our citizenry as a leverage when we're talking to the de facto? Let them know that we are, you know, the American people elected their own officers, and then try to get them or persuade them to allow us to do our job for our quote unquote constituency.
This is why I'm cringing with the fact that there's maybe only 20 to 25, possibly 30 state assemblies right now that recognize the legitimacy of the peacekeeping task force, the directorate, liaison role, or anything else as having any kind of significance or importance in the formation of their 4 pillars.
Yeah,
they don't see the value. They don't see the
Mhm.
value in the service charter yet. A lot of them. I'm not saying not all of them, but to my knowledge, there's what, maybe 20, 25 or 30 at the most. And I've heard people say negative things, and the only thing I can say to that, and I don't want to dwell on that because that's not what we're here for, is I think a lot of them are throwing back into seeing what happened in the prior iteration of the peacekeeping task force, and maybe they just psychologically can't let go of that, or they're still in that de facto mindset where they think that, oh, they're just part of the federation, they're just trying to come in here and tell us how to set up our assembly and what to do and how to do it, and blah 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 blah. No, I'm part of the General Assembly too. I'm that liaison trying to bridge you to your lifeline to get stood up with them 4 pillars and get going and put this all together. You know, I mean, it's a service charter, but I think I like, again, I like what you were just starting to say though about what Joe's feedback was on the first line of offense, because, you know, to me, this is a building block. We can't, yes, we would ideally have elements of first, second, and third line all simultaneously coming together. But if we don't have the foundation cornerstone of first line down, then second and third, if we're trying to do it simultaneously, is probably going to be a little bit shaky. Or am I remiss in saying that?
No, I think we've been talking about how we're going out there to educate the people. Well, we got to educate them first. But I want to educate them in a strategy. After I educate, what's the follow-up? We're going to educate them, tell them what the law is, tell them what their position is. And after that, what's the follow-up? The follow-up is the next line, our second line. Where are we going with the directive? Where are we going with the order? So yeah, I have it this way because we have to be going. We said we need to educate. Well, I got that out there first. And we can't charge them with the crime if they don't know.
No, 100%. Absolutely. That's no due process if they're not given notice of the crime that they're committing, for sure.
Marvin?
Yes, ma'am. I want to agree with Richard there. I mean, David, sorry, where he said about, the assemblies not really caring about what the peacekeeping task force has to say. And I can testify to that because my assembly basically told me, it's like, you're just a part of the federation, you know. They say, we said it word for word what they said to me, you know. And so I've had that same dealing. So yeah, if we could have somebody or someone else talk to them, because they totally ignore me all the time.
Yeah,
but I yield.
Thanks, Marvin. That is a concern, and they had some back and forth on that matter in the last coordinated training call. So the director have been talking about how we're going to address that to try to help the assemblies understand what the PKTF role is and assisting them to get standing and seated. So that more of that is coming so that we can communicate what our position is and what our job is. Yeah.
May I make one more just comment on that too, really quick, and again, not to focus on it, but just to have that awareness of the challenges there. And thank you, Marvin, for sharing your story as well. Missouri currently still has two factions. Louise, I know you're aware of that because Kathy and Joe have probably filled you on what's going on Missouri, I'm sure. But the one faction, which is the Missouri Assembly as a whole proper, where the Federation recognized coordinators are at, actually formulated investigation on the PKTF while they were working with us, the General Assembly Sessions Committee, that's not the General Assembly proper. That's how much vehement opposition can actually exist in some of the assemblies right now. I mean, if they thought they could have gotten away with it, they might have even tried to put the PKTF on the stand and try them in the court system. You know, what are you doing interfering here? Are you trying to break up the lawful assembly? You know, and again, I don't want to put words in their mouth because they're not communicating with the rest of us at this point, and some transitions are going on there. But that is just, you know, we can't dwell on it because it is what it is. The liaison role is not going away. The PKTF's not going away. It's vital to the assemblies to recognize how important the service charter is so that we can get our assembly stood up quickly and efficiently with proper goals and directives and educating the people. And the Federation, I would think by now people should understand they ain't going to have a chance to stand their assembly up without the Federation. The Federation's not there to control things. Anna said it a million times. She don't have the time or the interest to try to control, you know, and run everybody's. We're not going to have a peacekeeping task force with a charter, service charter to help these people out, let them figure it out on their own. But that would have benefited nobody. So I know it's frustrating, Marvin, but yeah, I have faith that the directorate here for the Peacekeeping Task Force has got some things going on that are getting ready to start changing some things around and helping to enlighten the General Assemblies more to the value that we have to offer for sure.
Yeah, we're getting to that. I think somebody commented in the chat in the training meeting last time, which I thought was that helped me in my understanding of the PKTF even. They said the Federation is not there is a different jurisdiction, and don't get involved with what the assembly is doing once the assembly is standing and seated. If you're not standing and seated, then we're in your business.
I love it. Peacefully, lovingly, but we're in your business.
I mean, it makes sense now to me. It's like, oh, okay, because I do hear Anna say, well, that's a different jurisdiction. And to me, it caused a conundrum. It's like, well, if that's a different jurisdiction, how are we going to be helping them? Well, they can't stand and get seated without our assistance. They have to have the direction and the framework and all that. And yeah, I know PKTF has some problems and all that. Even the Continental Marshals have problems, but we all have problems. The assemblies have problems too.
Yes.
We're all learning how to do this.
Yes.
We need to know what our roles are and how all the pieces fit in the puzzle. Boom. That's what our role is to help the assemblies get standing and seated.
Yeah, you just said it so well. I mean, everybody has to understand what the role is, how all the pieces of the puzzle, i.e. roles, fit together and supposed to work together. We all have the same goal, but without a federation, there is no assemblies to stand up. You know, and that's what they need to realize. But yeah, I know we could burn each other's ears off all night talking about that. I still believe 100% of what you're doing here, and the outreach committees will see the value of this as we get ready to roll out these directives and this whole strategy, Louise. I know they will. I think Missouri will be excited about it and grasp a hold of it because the outreach committees, this is a no-brainer for them, what we're talking about here and what we're trying to strategize with. You got an easy plug in, got your template right here, just plug in, you know. I mean, I know it's a work in progress still, it's not done yet, but I mean, at that time it gets revealed, whatever level they're coming in on, 1A or whatever. It's a template. Let's go with it, run with it.
Now we talked about we brought up some other conundrums, but we don't have time to get into everything right now. So what I want you all to do for the next week is whatever the things that you all think about as far as terminology and being clear when we go out there in public. I want you to write down your premise, why you think we should use that particular terminology, such as peacekeepers. We talked about peacekeepers, how we going to be peacekeepers, and we're using the word enforcement. Okay, I'm not going to go into my opinions about that, but you think about it, and let's send some dialogue back and forth about the terminology peacekeepers and the words stand down, capitulate. How are we using enforce or enforcement when we're peacekeepers? How does that fit? How does peacekeepers address crime? How does all that fit? That creates, that does seem like it's contradictory. So we need to identify for ourselves, what is the sound premise about how we define peacekeepers? And then the people, we talked about the people being ignorant. How do you convince them of the crime, and convince them of the history of what's happened? They look like deer in the headlights when we're talking to them, when we go out there and do our outreach. So I want you to think about, how do we address the people? Because my thing, I already explained what my premise was when I address the people. I'm addressing the crime. I'm not going to be debating the laws. So how do you think would be clear? How clearly can we address the people as knowing that they're ignorant? What's the best way to address the people knowing that they're ignorant? And how much time is it going to take for us to get that strategy that you're thinking about done, accomplished? So if you think we should go out there and do education, how long do you think we should be doing this education before we get something done? How effective would that strategy be? That type of thing. So I want us to dialogue back and forth this coming week on terminology and conveying to the public clear messages. Let me go back to the minutes here. We didn't get to some of the things here. Let me show you in the phase 6 interim report. I wrote down comparisons in the interim report. So those are the terminologies I want you to be thinking about and good dialogue back and forth on.
Do we have access to any of these documents for mulling over and in consideration of this, or is this just, I don't know if we have access to.
David, okay, I don't think you have one.
No, I'm new and I've done a ton of talking here, just being the new boy on the block. I'm trying to.
This is the interim report. Let me get it here. I'll put it in the chat. The other ones have it, but you'll have it again.
I saw it on video when I went back and through and watched all the past sessions. I just didn't have anything to plug into.
Let me see if I can get this. Oh,
I knew I wanted to be part of this though as soon as I started watching these videos.
I had to stop screen share. All right, so that's the interim report. So
awesome. Thank you for that.
All right, so I'm going to go back.
Marvin and Rich, it's a pleasure to meet you guys. And I've heard Rich speak a few times on some of the other videos, and like the value that you guys are bringing to this. I know there's usually a lot more people here too, from what I saw in the previous one. So looking forward to putting our heads together on this, see what we can do.
All right, so that's to evaluate the messaging and language used in the project to determine if it meets our quote unquote peaceful message standard. So evaluate that, and let's have some dialogue back and forth. Now, the two things I'm going to mention here before we close is developing the training for the assemblies and the training for the peacekeepers. So I'm going to be developing a training for phase 1, 1A, 2 for the assemblies. The implementation guide that we have for the assemblies, they said some assemblies said, well, we don't know how to go out there and do such and such. So that's why I came up with the idea of we're going to do a whole training to get the assemblies prepared with step 1, step 2, step 3 on how to go out there and implement the phase 1, phase 1A, and phase 2. And then the peacekeepers, their phase 3, we're going to, Boyd's going to be over that. He's going to develop some training with that of how to go out and present first line, second line, third line out there to the de facto officers, and how all the paperwork fits in together, because we want what the assemblies are doing and what the peacekeepers are doing to fit hand in glove, using the same type of paperwork and all that kind of thing. So me and Boyd's going to get together to put these two training series together. So but Anna has to approve all of, a lot of this stuff. So that's kind of gonna slow us down a little bit, because we got to make sure it's right, and we have to yes, the Federation has to approve it. Yes, they got it. We have to, we don't go until they say go. Well, I should say the fiduciary have to approve it, because I am in the Federation, but the fiduciary has to approve it. We don't go until she say go. So that's coming, and in the next meetings, it's going to change a little bit, because the next meetings in the near future, when these trainings start to go, the strategy task force session will be a training session. We probably alternate between the assemblies and the peacekeepers. So one session is going to be training for the assemblies. The next 2 weeks later, the next session will be training for the peacekeepers. That's what I'm thinking right now, is to make that training session the same times we have this, but we'll see.
And Louise, will the training sessions for the assemblies be focused more towards those that are like on the outreach committees and things like that, and the education committees already within the General Assembly, those people that are interested in that kind of thing and in those committees, basically?
Yeah, I would imagine it would be the outreach committee who would be the ones attending the training, because they're the ones have to implement outreach for their assemblies. But for the phase 3 peacekeepers training, I imagine the sheriffs, the continental marshals, the liaisons, the militia commanders, those people will be attending those trainings.
Now, if we're on a state that doesn't have any of those peacekeepers, then where will phase 3 be for states like that?
You won't have a phase 3. You'll go to phase 1A.
Gotcha.
To do outreach.
Yep.
Because you need to get some people on your
no cutting corners here, David Custer. No, I get you.
Hey, guys, if I may, that's where we always start putting on more than one hat.
No, I hear you, Rich.
Okay, so, and I did ask for a volunteer who wants to monitor the map of progress for phase 1A and phase 1 and 2. So that's still on the table. Once we get the assemblies, knowing what assemblies is going to be doing what, then we can start creating a map of who's going to be doing what. Yes, Richard.
Hey, Louise, I wanted to say I'm working on a map project now on Illinois, just to try and map our ASN population by the counties that we have, so we know where more of our population is at. So if I can get that figured out, I might be able to apply that to making our bigger map, to be able to track our different assemblies as they step into this research project. Okay. I'll have to keep that in mind. I'll let you know how I'm coming up with mine. All right.
Yes, I appreciate it. Any other questions before we go? Oh, next meeting.
2 weeks, right?
2 weeks. So it looks like the 2nd, February 2nd. Yeah. All right. Well, I thank you for your input and everything. I expect some dialogue back and forth, so we can start, but continue this conversation on getting our language clear and addressing some of these conundrums that come up when we say one thing, but it contradicts another thing, that type of thing.
Are we notified by email of when the meetings are? Because I by chance hit this meeting tonight by going in and looking on a Telegram channel and saw that it was posted there. But of course, I never formally advised anybody that I was interested in this prior to just showing up tonight. So I'm asking, could I please be put on an email list or something like that?
I will put you on the list, Dave.
Thank you, Louise.
Yeah. All right. Well, you all have a good night. Sorry it went a little long. I like to end at 1.5 hours at the latest. So we had 2 hours, but yeah, I'm a
bit chatty. I warned you all of that in that interview, Louise. Sorry, but
all right. You all have a good night.
God bless.
All right, then. Bye-bye.